Guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Damola, and on today's tutorial we are going to be drafting this beautiful bustier blouse that you are seeing on your screen. So if you watched my last tutorial on how to cut and sew a gigot sleeve, this was the half length of the dress I was putting on, right? So without wasting much of your time, let's get right into the tutorial. So the first thing I went ahead to do was to draft my basic bodice block, right? Now if you don't know how to do this, I have a tutorial on my channel on how to draft a basic bodice block, and I'm going to be linking it in the description box below. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to come to my shoulder, right, and I'm going to take the measurement I have there and I'm going to divide it into two by folding my tape into two, like so, right? I'm going to note that point and I'm going to connect it straight down to my bust point, like so. So after I've done that, right, I'm going to come to my under bust. Now regardless of the dart that I've already taken on my under bust, I am going to be taking half an inch after my existing dart, right, and I'm going to be connecting that to my half length, like so. And after doing that, the next thing I'm going to do is to come to the 1 inch below my bust point, and I'm going to connect from that point to my under bust, like so. I'm going to be using a ruler for this, but if you have your French curve, you can go ahead and use your French curve. So now the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure the distance between my bust point and my under bust, and I'm going to go ahead and place that measurement on my bust point, like so, making sure my tape is facing upward, and that is going to be my upper chest line, right? But because I want this bustier to be a little bit lower, I am going to be maintaining my chest line. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to my under bust and I'm going to measure my dart intake around there, and I have 1.5 inches, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and take ½ inch towards the center front on my chest line, and I'm going to be taking 1 inch towards the armhole area. Now before joining into my bust point, I'm going to be taking 1/4 inch after the actual point that I marked. I am going to be marking 1/4 inch after it. This is to eliminate any gaping when I'm done sewing, right? So now I'm going to be connecting from the 1/4 inch that I took down to my bust point, like so. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to go ahead and blend those curvy areas to eliminate any pointiness. So after doing that, the next thing now is to determine how deep I want my center front to be. So I don't want it to be too deep, so I'm just going to go 1 inch below my chest line, and I'm going to be creating a sweetheart neckline with my French curve. So after doing that, I'm basically done with the front part of this bustier. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and replace all my dart intake. So I came to my chest line, I measured my dart intake at that point, and I'm going to be imputing it after my bust measurement, right? Then I'm going to come to my waistline. I'm going to measure the dart intake on that point, impute my waist measurement, and I'm going to be returning the dart right after it. Now whatever I have on my under bust, I am going to be imputing the same thing on my half length, because my under bust and my half length measurement is the same thing. But if your under bust and your half length measurement is different, please take the measurement separately. And after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and add my sewing allowance of 1.5 inches all through, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. But before cutting it out, I'm going to go ahead and label my yoke. So in case you want to have a yoke for your bustier, this is the point where you go ahead and label your yoke. But I'm not going to be using a yoke for this project because I only need the tube part for this project, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. So after cutting it out, this is what it looks like, right? So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and cut out the yoke. Then I can go ahead and cut through the dart as well. So please pay close attention to the parts that I'm cutting out, right? And please, when you are cutting out this part, make sure that you don't leave any pointiness on that part, so that when you are done sewing, you won't have it looking funny at the end of the day, right? So this is what it looks like after cutting it out. We have the front pieces and we have our yoke. So now I'm going to go ahead and set the yoke aside, because what I'm working on is a tube bustier and it does not have a yoke. So now I'm basically done with the front part of this bustier and I'm moving on to the back pattern. So now for the back panel of this bustier, there's basically nothing much to it, right? I've gone ahead to also draft my basic bodice for the back, and the only different thing is that I have my zipper allowance, right? So what I'm just going to do now is to determine how open I want my back to be, right? So I'm just going to go down from my center back about 1 inch. Then I'm going to be connecting it to my chest line, right? And after that, I'm going to go ahead and input all my measurements, replace my dart and add my seam allowance. Then I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. So I'm very sorry, but I could not find the clip of me returning my dart for the back and adding my seam allowance. But basically what I did was just the same thing we did for the front. I returned the dart intake and I went ahead to add my seam allowance to the side. Then after that, I went ahead to cut out the yoke and I labeled it. So I've gone ahead to cut all the pieces on my actual fabric as well as the aligning pieces as well. So for the center front, I have 2 pieces. For the side, I have 4 pieces, and for my back, I have 4 pieces as well. So this is the point where you go ahead and iron your interfacing on your center front and on your side pieces, right? But because this is a dress, I am not going to be ironing any interfacing on it, right? So I am going to be working with a laminating foam instead. So I've gone ahead to cut out the laminating foam and this is what it looks like. So now note that if this was not a dress, if I was working with an Ankara fabric or probably a lace fabric, I would have used a wadding instead. I would iron my Estee or BFF interfacing on my Ankara or lace lining, right? Then I'm going to iron my wadding on it, right? And after I've secured the wadding, I am going to be using my hemming gum to attach this laminating foam on it again, just to give it more push-up effect, right? But because this is a dress, I don't like ironing interfacing on my dresses. This is why I'm using just the laminating foam alone, but I'm still going to be adding a bracket to it to give it that push-up effect still. So while I was cutting my laminating foam, right, I made sure it is 1 inch after my under bust and also 1 inch below my sweetheart neckline, so that when I'm sewing, I am not going to be sewing on it, right? So now the one for the side is about 4.5 inches wide, and I also make sure it is 1 inch below my neckline so that I'm not going to sew on it, because if you sew on it at the end of the day, when you iron it, you would notice that no matter how much you iron it, it is not going to lay flat, right? So now the next thing I'm going to do is to secure the laminating foam to the actual fabric with my pins like so, right? And after securing it down, the next thing I'm going to do is to place them side by side, and I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew by 1/2 inch on all sides. So after sewing it, this is what it looks like on the wrong side, right? And this is what the right side looks like. But if you go ahead and iron it like this, it is not going to lay flat, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut off that excess foam and I'm going to be cutting it away from the side, right? So this is what it looks like after I was done cutting it out, right? You can see that it is not coming out yet. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and iron it with my tailor's ham, right? But note that I said it earlier that I'm going to be adding a bra foam, a bra cup rather, to the lining part of this dress. That is what is going to make the breast part really come out without ironing a wording on it, right? So now I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and I am going to iron it with my tailor's ham. Then I'm going to come back to show you guys what it looks like. So this is what it looks like after I was done ironing, right? I went ahead to open up the seam and I pressed it open on the wrong side, right? As you can see. So please do the same thing as well. Open up the seam and press it open, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and sew the bra cup to the lining part, and I am going to be joining the lining to the actual fabric. Then I'm going to come back to show you guys what the finished product of the dress looks like. So this is what it looks like after I was done, right? So you can see the reason why I said I don't need a yoke for this project, and also you can see that even after maintaining my chest line, my bust was not exposed. Like I said earlier, I am not a very busty person, right? So if you like this video, please do well to give this video a thumbs up, like and share, and also don't forget to turn on post notifications so you get notified whenever I post a new video. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.